Look, it's no big surprise that tipping is a part of the American culture. And while I was on my cruise last week to the Western Caribbean on the Carnival celebration, a U.S. company made the headlines. They came out and said very directly, our employees, they rely on your tips. And if you do not tip them, pre-tip them before the service is rendered, well, you're going to get penalized. Penalized for not pre-tipping. It made me start to think about what I was doing on the cruise ship and how I was tipping. I did some analysis and I came up with some startling summaries. I found out last week I tipped 6 people just kind of in a regular way. And shockingly, I found that I double tipped 5 people. And even more shockingly, I found out there was a handful of people I completely avoided, so I did not have to tip at all. I'm going to break it all down and explain to you what this company is saying. Tipping, cruise tipping. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. I am your host, Tony, here to talk you through everything going on in cruising. And today we're going to touch on a subject that many have touched on before. We're going to talk about gratuities in the American culture. We're going to talk about gratuities on cruise ships. And we're going to talk specifically about how I tipped on my last cruise. Let's talk about tipping in the American culture. I did some research. I'm like, what is the history of tipping in the American culture? And it turns out that it started out with rich Americans in the early 1900s making trips to Europe and noticed that the aristocracy over there would give gratuities to people that were serving them. And so they brought that concept back to the United States. And well, the way it happens often, we tend to overdo it to the point that if you go to Europe now, you notice that there's not a lot of tipping, but if you come to the US, there is a whole lot of tipping, and that continues to expand and expand. And thinking about it immediately takes me back to my trip this year to Newport, Rhode Island, to see the Vanderbilt summer home, the Breakers, and realizing, yeah, that makes sense. These seem like the type of folks that would go to Europe and come back and introduce tipping into the American culture. And traditionally in the US culture, tipping gratuities has usually meant that you are giving money for a service that was rendered to you, and the amount of money that you gave was commensurate with the level of service that you got. There's certainly some tipping standards, but the overarching idea is that if you get really good service, you tip more. If you get poor service, you tip less. That's kind of the way that we do it in the United States, but things are starting to change, and that's evidenced by this article that came out while I was on my cruise talking about how DoorDash is going to start penalizing people who do not pre-tip their driver. Now, I don't know if you've ever used a food delivery service like Uber Eats or DoorDash, but when you're placing your order, you have the option to include a tip before you even get your food. So it kind of flies in the face of this idea of tipping after service has been rendered to you. But what DoorDash is saying is that if you don't tick that box for a tip before the service is rendered, then your order will be prioritized after all of the people that have tipped. So you're going to be penalized. You're going to be put at the back of the line just because you've decided not to tip before you get your service. That's kind of wild stuff. And did you know there's another industry out there that we're all pretty familiar with that would like you to tip prior to receiving service? And of course, I'm talking about the cruise industry, who's made a whole shift over the last few years to have something called an assigned daily gratuity, which you can prepay. And honestly, if you think about that DoorDash story and the way that cruise tipping works, it might not be too hard of a stretch to get to a place where, depending on whether or not you prepaid your cruise tips, it might affect the service that you get. I certainly hope it never gets there. I don't particularly agree with what DoorDash is doing, but it does seem like of all the industries I know, the way that tipping works in cruising is another industry where your level of service could be determined by your level of pre-service tip. Yeah, like I said, I hope we never get there, but let me tell you how I handle tipping on a cruise ship. I'm going to tell you the 6 people I tipped regularly. I'm going to tell you the 5 people that I double tipped, and I'm going to tell you about the people I avoided so I would not have to tip. But before I do that, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you won't miss out on any of these episodes. If you're brand new here, welcome. My name is Tony. I'm all about the cruise news, cruise tips, just really trying to make you have a better cruise vacation and hopefully entertain you with some of my stories, some of my tales from the high seas as we go along. Yeah, look, I'm saying thank you in advance. I don't know if you're going to hit the subscribe button or the like button, but I'm going to assume that you will, and I'm going to say thank you in advance. All right, here's the list of the people that I tipped regularly. The first person I tipped on my cruise was the luggage handler, the porter at the cruise port. It is customary for the people that pull your bag from your trunk and put it onto a luggage cart right there at the port. It is customary to give them a tip. I normally tip $5 a bag. On this last cruise, there were 4 of us. We had 4 bags. I gave the luggage handler $20, and he seemed very happy about it. He helped direct me to the parking garage. It was a good exchange. I have heard of porters being not excited about the tip that they've gotten, and I've heard them say stuff to people, and I've heard them be disgruntled. It's kind of funny how money can do that. It can change your whole experience from a positive to a negative experience. I've been doing that $5 a bag for many cruises now, and it seems like that's what's eliciting a good experience. The second set of people that I tipped in a normal way on this cruise were the servers at the Paradise Beach Club in Cozumel. Paradise Beach Club Cozumel is an all-inclusive beach resort. They have a big swimming pool, they have a beach, they have unlimited food, they have unlimited drinks, and while you're there, you are assigned a server, and that person takes care of you, and it is customary to tip that person for their service. We always get great service at Paradise Beach Club Cozumel. It's my favorite beach club in Cozumel, and of course, I tipped the wait staff there. My next tipping opportunity that I want to highlight was one that I did not anticipate, but fortunately, I had some money on me. When we were in Roatan, Honduras, we took a ship excursion, and that ship excursion took us to AJ's Monkeys and Sloths. This is a habitat reserve where you can go and hug a sloth and see macaw and play with monkeys. Each of those encounters, the sloths, the macaws, the monkeys, was conducted by an employee of AJ's who were funny and entertaining, and of course they were wrangling the animals for you, giving you a good animal experience. Well, on the way out of AJ's, there was a big tip jar right there that said, hey, please tip for the guides, the people that were doing the presentation. Like I said, fortunately I had some coin on me, and I tipped the folks there at AJ's. I also tipped 2 more people during that shore excursion in Roatan, and these are people that I always think about tipping. I tipped the bus driver, the person that was driving us around on the shore excursion, and then I tipped the guide, the person that was on the bus with us, telling us about Roatan, giving us the instructions to get from one location to another. I always make sure I bring cash for the bus driver and for the tour guide when it comes to shore excursions. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Tony, you keep talking about all these people that you tipped regularly, but none of them are cruise ship employees. Well, I'll tell you about one cruise ship employee or set of employees that I tipped in somewhat of a regular way. Let's talk about the casino dealers. I only tested the fates one time on this cruise. I sat down with $300 at a $25 blackjack table. That was my limit for the cruise, and I said, you know what? I'm either going big or going home, and I had a really good time at that blackjack table. I played about an hour session, and I was able to turn my $300 into $505. The way it works for me when I am in the casino and I want to tip the dealers, well, I tip them by letting them gamble along with me. This is pretty customary for gamblers. At blackjack, what you do is you may place $1, or if you hit a blackjack and you get a $2.50 chip, you may place that beside your regular bet on the blackjack table, and that means that the dealer is playing your hand along with you. So if you win your hand, they also win their little bet. That becomes their tip. And so I did that a few times along the way. And then, like I said, at the end of my session where I bought in for $300, I had $505. And so I just threw the $5 chip at the dealers as a tip. It's pretty standard to tip the casino dealers in some way, either placing a bet for them or just straight up tipping them at the end. And it's a good thing to do because they tend to look out for you, especially if you're tipping along the way. They'll pay extra attention to you to make sure that you're doing the right thing. For example, if you consistently make a side bet and then you forget to make a side bet, they'll point it out to you. The tipping goes a long way when it comes to the dealers. So I tip them in, I guess, a regular way, a regular casino way. But the interesting thing about cruising is you do have the opportunity to double tip people. And I ended up double tipping 5 5 different people. And you may be asking, what do you mean double tipping? Well, I am somebody who always prepays my gratuities. So like we talked about earlier, I give a gratuity before service is even rendered. And so I prepaid my gratuities on this cruise. And my understanding is the prepaid gratuities covers my room steward, it covers people that are serving me food, and it covers some people in the back that we don't know about. That's my understanding when it comes to Carnival. And in reality, that prepaid gratuity should be enough. But like I said earlier, us Americans culturally are kind of trained to make sure that we tip people that we have interaction with. And so I think the cruise lines know this too. I think they understand that there's some double tipping going on. And so in addition to the prepaid gratuities, I also came out of my pocket and gave people that gave me service cash. The first person's probably obvious. I gave my room steward a tip at the end of the cruise. I normally give $10 a day per cabin. So if I'm there by myself, I give $10 a day. If there's 2 of us in the cabin, I give $10 a day. This again is in addition to my prepaid gratuity. So at the end of the cruise, I left $70 for my room steward. Another person I came out of pocket for was our head waiter, Henry, in the main dining room. We ate in the main dining room all 7 days of our cruise so that we could try the new Carnival menus. I'll be telling you about that at some point. Now, of course, Henry wasn't the only person taking care of us in the main dining room. Henry also had 2 assistant waiters. And so we gave those assistant waiters a tip also. We gave a tip of $20 to assistant waiter Bruce, and we gave $20 tip to assistant waiter Marjorie. And so far, that is 4 people I double tipped on my last cruise. The last set of people that I double tipped on this cruise, and I don't know how many of them there were, but anybody who sold me a drink. If you sold me coffee, if you sold me a soft drink, I might have 1 alcoholic beverage. Anybody that sold me a drink on that cruise got double tipped, because the way it works when it comes to the cruise line is that they charge a gratuity when they sell you a drink. If they sell you a coffee, there's a built-in gratuity. If they sell you an alcoholic drink, there is a built-in gratuity, and they're going to give you a receipt, and somewhere it's going to tell you the percentage that you already tipped, I believe 18%, but there's also going to be a line on that receipt that says additional tip. And every one of those people got an additional tip from me, whether it was $1 or $2, depending what the bill was. I double tipped all of those people after already paying the gratuity that was included with the drink purchase. So I've given you the list of people that I tip regularly. I've given you the list of the people that I double tipped. Now I have to tell you about a group of people that I actively avoided so I did not have to tip. And this happened primarily in Costa Maya, Mexico. What a crazy day Costa Maya Day was for us. There were 4 ships in Costa Maya. This is the busiest I've ever seen it. And there were 3 sets of people I actively avoided so I would not have to tip. The first was a harp player on the pier. There was a harp player playing wonderful music. He had a bucket out for tips. I tried not to partake in the harp music. I didn't film the harp music. I didn't look at the harp player. I just kept going because I didn't bring any dollar bills with me to tip the harp player. I didn't want to engage the harp player. I didn't want him to think that I was enjoying what he was doing, which is a weird thing. But I just didn't want him to think that I was consuming what he was putting out there and not showing gratitude for it by tipping. So I just kept my head down and I kept walking by the harp player. Now, if you've ever been to Costa Maya, you know that after you've made the trek down the long pier, you have to walk through a gift shop before you get to the rest of the port. And often positioned outside of that gift shop are people dressed up like Mayans for a photo opportunity where you can stop and get your picture taken with Mayan warriors and kings and all that stuff in front of a temple. And they've got a tip jar right in front of them also. So I did not engage them for a picture. I did not film them. Again, much like the harp player, I just kept on walking because I didn't want them to feel like I was consuming something from them without showing any gratitude. Again, this would have been solved if I would have just got some dollar bills in my pocket, but I didn't. This is a mistake that I made. I'm a big fan of street performers. I'm a big fan of people with the buckets out, and it really hurts me sometimes when I see people taking advantage of them being out there doing their thing and then not showing any gratitude. And then probably the most famous example of people that I avoided on Costa Maya is they have these high flyers. I did catch a 4-second clip because I just wanted to film the people filming them. I didn't stay for the show because I didn't have any money to tip them. You can't miss them really. But again, these high flyers, this is the way that they make their money. They pass around the bucket. And so, yeah, Costa Maya was a big day of avoiding street performers for me, and I love street performers. I share that with you, and judge me as you will, but I share that with you just to remind you that when you're going into these cruise ports, there are going to be people that have photo opportunities, that are out there doing their art, that are out there doing their skill or whatever, and they're not doing it for the charity of the thing. They're not doing it just purely for your enjoyment. They're doing it because they would like to make a little bit of money. So don't be a bonehead like me. Don't forget to take your dollar bills and tip the street performers. What else can we say? Tipping, a huge part of American culture, a huge part of cruising culture. I'd love to hear how you approach it. Who do you tip that I didn't tip, or did I tip somebody I shouldn't have tipped? Leave a comment below. Well, shamelessly, I need to remind you that YouTube's provided a way that you could tip me if you want. If you've enjoyed the show and you got some coin you want to throw my way, it's called a super thanks. You could do it on every video. Super thanks. Check it out if you will. Like, I'm not above asking for a tip. All joking aside, thank you so much for checking out the show. You really could show your support if you got anything out of the show by hitting the like button and maybe telling a friend. This is Tony for La Vida Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you. Could you imagine that? Hey, I just wanted to tell you I watched a fun video. No, share the video if you want. Tony for La Vida Loca. Till the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.